Across the Fence, we turn over a few ideas about a couple of innovative agricultural practices, new approaches to an old way of doing things that have some Vermont farmers rethinking how they're farming. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Agriculture has been around for about 12,000 years, give or take a century, and every year farmers have to make choices that affect their livelihoods and the well-being of their communities. At this year's UVM Extension No-Till and Cover Crop Symposium, farmers were asked to consider how making changes to fundamental farming practices can increase income, improve water quality, and ensure the success of Vermont's working landscape. Across the Fence, associate producer Keith Silva and photographer Rebecca Gollin were at the symposium and filed this report.
It's going to hold your...
From the speaker's podium to the exhibitor's hall, the phrase that was repeated over and over again at the 2015 No-Till and Cover Crop Symposium was, "Just do it."
Try something new this year and work on it.
For a lot of farmers, the practices of no-till and cover cropping are something new. This symposium, hosted by the University of Vermont Extension, puts those practices in the spotlight.
No-till is planting without tilling the soil.
John Kepke is a dairy farmer from Wisconsin and a nationally recognized no-till practitioner and advocate.
When we think about nature, when we think about what God or Mother Nature does out there, there's no plows, okay? There is no tillage. And so we as farmers are generally most productive when we can mimic nature as much as we can and work with the natural processes rather than work against them. Man's been tilling the soil for a long time, usually for methods of weed control, making the soil easier to plant in and that sort of thing. So it's a hard concept to get around that, no, we don't really need to do this.
No-till farming goes hand in hand with the practice of cover cropping. Once a crop like corn is harvested, another crop, like grass, is planted immediately afterwards. This practice covers precious topsoil from running off and improves soil fertility.
I try to look at it as integrating the whole crop picture rather than just, I want to plug a cover crop in here, here, here. The more we can put everything together, the natural web together, the better off I think we'll be. And that's something we're going to need to look at in the future. The world isn't getting any bigger, but the population's getting larger, and there's going to be more and more demands on our natural resources to produce food. And those are challenges ahead.
A 2014 United States Department of Agriculture report puts the number of acres of corn in Vermont around 85,000. UVM Extension estimates 20% of that ground is managed using a cover crop. Because of the increased awareness and regulation of phosphorus runoff in waterways, cover cropping has become the go-to practice for many Vermont farmers.
The ante is up in terms of Lake Champlain. That problem is not going away. Phosphorus and water quality issue is not going to go away. And so maybe where it might have been easy to kind of put it off before, it's not that easy to put it off anymore. And so farmers are really starting to pay attention to these no-till and cover crop practices. And they're starting to see their neighbors do it and have good luck.
Dave Manning owns and operates Manning Dairy in Swan.
We plant about 450 acres of corn. Probably half of that is cover cropped at the moment. We're working on, within the next year or two, doing 100% of that. And approximately 40% of it is no-till right now. And each year we're trying to increase that number.
Manning has been using no-till practices and cover cropping for a little over 3 years. His advice is to try it and to be patient.
I would say try it on some of their acres and see what they think. Be patient because it is a long process to convert over to, it's not a year or two thing. It probably could take up to 10 years to get your fields fully transitioned into a no-till system. So it requires some patience and patience.
Do farmers have a lot of patience?
I gotta have.
Lucas Criswell, a farmer from Pennsylvania, echoes how important it is to try these practices. He urges farmers to be proactive.
I want to be ahead of the agency. I want to be ahead of being told what to do. I want to be part of the solution of this is how we need to do it. We all get forced in the mentality from the experts, the people that sell us seed, sell us fertilizer. You need to put this on, you need to put that on. Otherwise, you aren't going to be profitable. And I'm here to encourage guys to say, try it. Go without this, go without that. And show the benefits of growing covers, how it can be very beneficial, that can actually supplement something you buy in a jug, that's something you can actually grow. And it's about which side of the check do you want to side, the front side of the check or the back side of the check? I get tired of writing out them big checks for expenses, and it's to learn how to do without. And the stuff that you spend money on usually ends up in the watershed.
A conference about farming practices and strategies does not exclude the public. Everyone has a stake in these discussions and presentations.
I'm very encouraged to see so many farmers here today.
Denise Smith is the executive director of Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, a nonprofit group that works to clean up the northern part of the lake. Even though Smith is not a farmer, she knows the impact farmers have on all of our lives.
The fact of the matter is we all eat, and we all eat food that's grown by somebody. And so learning what some of the efforts that need to happen to make sure that food is grown in a sustainable manner, I think is extremely important for the average person. I mean, what's the statistic now? 2% of us, 2% of the population is farming for 98% of the population. It's a huge disconnect right now in terms of what's happening on farmlands and the opportunities that are out there. And I just think as an average citizen who may not even live near the water or the lake, to know what's happening on the land is extremely valuable.
It's said, forewarned is forearmed. The support these farmers are receiving at this symposium to try no-till and cover cropping might make the difference on their farm and in our environment. In South Burlington, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, I'm joined in the studio now by Kirsten Workman and Jeff Sanders. Both are members of the UVM Extension Crop, Soil, and Pasture teams. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why are these practices of no-till farming and cover cropping getting so much attention right now?
Well, I think farmers are always trying new things, right? It's always an evolving process. So whether it's how they milk their cows or plant their crops or become more profitable, they're always trying new things. Right now, I think these two particular practices are getting a lot of attention because farmers are paying more attention to soil health, and they're definitely paying more attention to water quality. And these two practices together can really affect both of those dramatically. In addition to that, UVM Extension, we've worked really hard at trying to find information and technologies to make these practices work here in Vermont. A lot of farmers have tried them in the past and maybe didn't have great luck, and so sort of put them to the side. And now we're coming up with new technologies, new research, new information about how to make them be successful and work really well. And so farmers are trying them and having success, and so we're seeing more and more of that be adopted.
Yep, I think I would just add to that the farmers are innovative in their solutions to try to improve efficiencies on their farm, and cover cropping has a lot of benefits in addition to just soil health. I mean, it's an added fertilizer. There's green manure value there, and no-till saves tillage passes, saves fuels. There's a lot of savings, and if you do it right, you can get as equal yields or even increased yields, especially in our extreme climates that we're seeing now. It's kind of a mediating effect of the weather.
And so how widespread are these practices in Vermont?
They're fairly widespread. For the cover cropping, it's going on up and down the state. We've brought a lot of technology in over the last 3 years. There's a lot of new equipment. There's helicopter firms working in it, and there's highboy seeders that have been acquired recently. There's inner seeders. There's a bunch of different things. There's actually people are doing it with just their old fertilizer spreaders. Everybody's trying to find the best way to do it, and so it's going on up and down the Champlain Valley, and it's going on over towards the Connecticut River as well. We work on no-till planters. As far as no-till goes, we've worked with farms down in Danby. We've worked on farms over in St. Johnsbury, trying to help them set up their equipment to be able to do this. And obviously in Franklin and Addison County, and Chittenden County, it's becoming much more widespread.
And so what is it about our landscape and climate that makes this such a big challenge?
It's Vermont.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of challenging soil types, and we just submitted a grant that we were awarded, a national CIG grant, to do a bunch of cover crop work. And in that grant, we looked at the climate. And so Franklin County and Addison County are the 20th and 24th top producing corn silage counties in the United States.
Wow.
And then if you look at the weather and the rainfall, basically Franklin County is the wettest corn silage producing county in the United States. So obviously soil moisture, rainfall, and the fact that we're in a predominantly corn silage system where we take all the residue off the field and leave the field bare, it makes it a challenge from a water quality, soil health perspective, where in many other parts of the country they leave a lot of the residue to help build the soils. Here historically we haven't. So between the soil types and the weather and the topography, there's a lot of challenges to trying to balance the economic benefits of these practices against what the weather and the soil gives you to work with.
Is there special equipment farmers need?
Yes, there is. I mentioned some of the cover cropping equipment. For the cover cropping side, there's interseeders, manure. Some people do spread in their manure too, cover crops, but there's now high boy rigs which will travel over the corn. What we're finding is, given our season length, that many farmers are seeding their cover crops very late in the year. So we're getting somewhat less than stellar establishment and growth. So what we're doing is we're trying to work with ways like the helicopters and the interseeders to get the crops established earlier to improve stands of the cover crop. So on the cover cropping side, there's a bunch of new equipment that's come in recently to the area. And for cover cropping, for no-till planting, the planter needs some modifications over a conventional planter. We need to look at moving the residue out of the way for planting and heavier duty setups. And the other big thing about no-till is closing the slit that the corn gets dropped in. In some heavy soils, that can be a challenge. And we've looked to the Midwest and we've looked to other areas to try to bring some of those technologies here to help with that. And we've had pretty good success with it.
So Kirsten, let me ask you, what's the tie between cover crops and water quality in Lake Champlain? Because that's a huge issue.
Yeah, there's a lot. So first of all, having a living, growing plant on that soil taking up nutrients and protecting soil from erosion is huge. So the more days of the year we can have a green growing crop on that field, the better it is for soil health and water quality. And especially in our systems here in Vermont where we use manure, to have a plant growing on that ground in the fall when we spread manure and again in the spring, recycling those nutrients and preventing the nutrient loss is really, really important. So we're working all the time on how do we make that system work really, really well and take up the most nutrients possible to keep that nutrient in the system, on the field, growing another crop, as opposed to being lost to the environment and eventually to Lake Champlain.
Right, and that's important to farmers because the manure is a resource.
Yeah, they don't want to lose any of it. So
right.
A cover crop is a great solution for that.
And so what opportunities does UVM Extension provide for farmers who are trying these practices to talk with other farmers who might be kind of on the fence about that?
Yeah, you name it. We work really hard to work with farmers to put practices on the ground in a way that we can share that information with others. We have equipment available. We have no-till grain drills, interseeders. We have resources to connect them to service providers that do that work. We host workshops, symposiums, and then we do a lot of research projects so that we can take these systems from other parts of the country, put them on the ground in Vermont, and really measure the results to see what works the best here.
And when you have one successful farmer, that's a big help because they talk to other farmers.
Exactly. Or even just they see it.
Right. So how can people find out more about the work that you're doing?
They can contact any of us directly. You can call 1-800-956-1125. You can go to the Extension website and you'll find ways to get a hold of folks like Jeff and myself, and we can come right out to your farm and help you figure it out. So
That's terrific. Well, thank you both for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.